Hello, my name is Ellison Rhodes, and this is my presentation on the effects of public investment on productivity. To start off, we're going to talk about the common types of strategies the government uses to stimulate the economy through public expenditure. Donald Trump passed a tax decrease. It's pretty common for the Republican Party to push these. Um, Tax decreases will decrease the tax burden on individuals and businesses, which will have more money flowing through markets. One of the cons of tax decreases is that they'll decrease public revenues. And if you don't decrease spending, then it'll drive up deficits. Um, Recently, we've received direct payments in the form of COVID stimulus. This has a similar effect to tax decreases by increasing the money supply in the markets, but it also increases deficits pretty heavily. One thing that the government uses behind the scenes a lot are subsidies, where they pay industries and businesses to decrease the expenditure on the public, or for things like EVs, give them drive down their costs so they can reach scale faster, which usually decreases the costs. This also decreased deficits. And then our fourth option is infrastructure projects. These have the benefits of both subsidies and direct payments by increasing the money supply by funding shovel-ready jobs on roads, bridges, um, power plants. Um, they also have a multiplying and spillover effect by providing the infrastructure for commerce and productive activity, like shipping and freight for rails. Usually they're tacked along with tax increases because they do increase deficits, and that comes along with the interest we have to pay by borrowing those big expenditures. Some research I did into figuring out how this affects productivity. I looked at high-speed rail and the interstate system, which we're more familiar with. Also, some other examples are in 2008, NASA made all their patents public, which gave a big push into R&D for private space companies. By not having to do that basic research, you save a lot of time and money. Also, Google received a National Science Foundation grant when they were starting up of $4.5 million, and they've turned that initial startup money into $1 trillion company that also helps commerce and productivity throughout the world. When I was looking at different stuff, I read a bunch of papers. These are on high-speed rails, both in Japan and China, and the researchers are trying to evaluate their effects on productivity. A lot of the content was pretty high level and a little bit out of my wheelhouse currently, but over and over again, when I was reading through these papers, I kept seeing the same functions. Also, I looked at some papers over just general infrastructure spending, and over again, we see these geometric series pop up. So I decided to try to approach a problem with and figure out the productivity gains through geometric series. At first, I looked at the Eisenhower Interstate System. It was first funded in 1957, and economists say that for every dollar spent on the interstate, it's produced $6 in economic activity. That's a 600% return on investment, which is a pretty good deal. And to evaluate this, we can to evaluate this mathematically, we can use a geometric series. The only problem is, since the the initial investment is $1, or and then the return is 6. At 600%, the absolute value of R is greater than 1. So the graph is going to diverge. And honestly, it's not very interesting. Although it is true, if you look at GDP in 1957, when the interstate system was funded, to GDP today, it's increased 20-fold and will probably continue to increase. We can't say that's all contributed to the interstate, but it's definitely has an effect. So instead, I decided to look at current events, and right now we have an infrastructure bill being proposed for $2 trillion. There's not a lot of estimates published right now for the effects that this infrastructure bill will have, but I looked at another paper written in 2014 on a similar bill that was proposed, and they said that due to job gains and a lot of the shovel-ready jobs, GDP would increase at conservatively at 0.3% per year. So we can use this function to figure out really what the gains are from that proposed spending, where we put in the initial value of 2 trillion and evaluate the summation going forward. Basically, you can see it in this chart at growing $6 billion a year, then down to $180 billion a year from the initial investment. We can summarize the annual growth with S sub n equals the initial investment with R to the whatever time frame you're projecting out to. And you see the same is true in year one. We get 2.6 trillion. We get plus $600 billion. In year two, we get an additional $180 billion, bringing us to $2.7 trillion, and so on and so forth. To actually figure out where this converges, since the absolute value of R was less than 1, we can use this function to evaluate the limit, and we find that it'll kind of max out at $2.85714 trillion. And this takes about 10 years to reach about the max. We have it, you see about year 9, we're basically there. And then by year 11, it's basically flattened out. You can actually view it on this graph too, but on the graph you kind of see it leveling out at year 4, year 5, but you can see, I guess, as it progresses, the gains are so small that the graph doesn't catch it as well. The one thing that evaluating infrastructure in this way doesn't give you is the actual spillover effects of because once you put the infrastructure there, it's there. It's there for the life. I mean, you do have maintenance costs, and the efficiency will be brought down by whatever interest rate you have to spend on your deficit spending. But you get a rough cost of the 10-year projection, at least by the job creation. This kind of analysis is beneficial for public servants, even the public, to see the benefits of public investment. A lot of people are big advocates of just letting the private sector do everything, and the private sector does a lot of things well. They innovate, they're fast on their feet, but they're also risk adverse, and a lot of these projects take a long time to have a return, and also the startup costs are just so high that a lot of people don't have that capital. Especially if you're pursuing non-excludable and non-rivalrous industries such as roads and rails and stuff like that. But it would be great if we funded things like ITER in France, where they're pursuing fusion energy. The Saturn IX rocket program really paved the way for SpaceX, and if we had some high-speed rail in this country, people wouldn't have to live in city centers. They could actually commute a lot better and spread that wealth around. So yeah, thank you.